I remember the moment vividly, as though it just happened. My name is Lindsay, I'm 32, and honestly, I can't fathom what was going through my mind at the time. I was in the kitchen, casually chatting with my sister, Danny, letting out frustrations I probably should have kept to myself. You know that feeling when you vent a little too much and later regret it? That was me, oversharing without a second thought. I confessed something I never imagined would leave my lips, something I now wish I could take back. I told Danny, without hesitation, that if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have dated Derek, my husband. I said it with such ease, as though I were commenting on a bad haircut rather than the man I vowed to spend my life with. Derek wasn't even doing anything wrong at that moment. He was in the other room, scrolling through his phone after work, his usual unwinding routine. Yet there I was, carelessly uttering words that carried more weight than I realized. Perhaps I was seeking sympathy, or maybe I was bored. Either way, I said it. Then came the silence, not Danny's silence. She's accustomed to my dramatic outbursts. No, this was different. It was a heavy, suffocating stillness, the kind that shifts the air. I glanced toward the doorway and saw him standing there. He didn't yell or demand an explanation. He didn't even look angry. He just stood there, his face unreadable, before quietly walking out. The sound of the front door closing hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't expected that. Derek's always been the patient one, the calm to my chaos. I assumed he'd argue, maybe even shout, but leave? That wasn't his style, or so I thought. As the minutes turned into hours, I tried to brush it off, even laughed it away with Danny. He'll be fine, I said, dismissively. Deep down, though, I felt the pang of guilt beginning to gnaw at me. When he didn't return that night, my frustration started to morph into worry. I texted him a quick, "You okay?" No response. Fine, I thought. If he wanted to sulk, that was on him. But as the night dragged on, I found myself obsessing. Was he teaching me a lesson? Punishing me for a fleeting moment of honesty? By morning, his side of the bed was still empty, his shoes remained by the door, and his toothbrush hadn't moved. He hadn't packed up and left for good, but something about his absence felt different this time. I sent another text. Can we talk? Still nothing. I vented to Danny, looking for validation. Should I really have to apologize for being honest? I argued, though the words felt hollow. I blamed him for eavesdropping, for walking away, for making me feel like the bad guy. But as the hours ticked by, doubt began to creep in. What if I had pushed him too far this time? Derek has always been the steady one, the person I could count on no matter what. I'd taken that for granted, assuming he'd always stay. But now, for the first time, I wasn't so sure. By the second day, worry was clawing at me. I called his mom, but she hadn't heard from him either. My mind raced between anger and fear. Was he hurt? Or was he simply done with me? As night fell again, I sat in the dark, staring at my phone, willing it to light up with a message, an apology, anything. But it stayed silent. And for the first time, I felt the weight of what I'd said and the very real possibility that I might have lost him for good. I heard a car outside, and my heart jumped. I kept checking my phone, refreshing my texts like a fool, as if somehow I'd missed his reply. But there was nothing, not a single word. Frustration bubbled up inside me. Who does that? Who just leaves without telling their wife where they're going? It was childish, plain and simple. Yet, as I sat there staring at my coffee, a darker thought crept in. What if he was really done this time? What if I'd finally pushed him past the point of no return? I didn't want to believe it, but the more I tried to brush it off, the more it lingered. Derek wasn't like this. He didn't play games or give the silent treatment. If he wasn't here, there had to be a reason, and maybe it was bigger than I was willing to admit. Around noon, Danny called. "Have you heard from him yet?" she asked gently, her tone softer than usual, as if trying not to spook me. "No," I snapped. "And, honestly, it's ridiculous. He's the one making this a big deal, not me." "Lind," she started cautiously, "you kind of made it a big deal first." Her words stung. I wanted to hang up on her. "You're supposed to be on my side," I said instead. But even as the words left my mouth, I felt a pang of guilt. She wasn't wrong. Not entirely. Maybe I had overreacted. But it wasn't like I'd meant to hurt him. I didn't think he'd take it this hard. People vent all the time. He was just being too sensitive. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. If he wasn't going to come back on his own, I'd find him myself. I called his mom again, still nothing. His friends?
Same.
Either they were covering for him, or they truly didn't know. One of them, Mark, sounded genuinely surprised when I asked. "Everything okay with you too?" he asked. "Yeah, fine," I said quickly, brushing him off. I drove aimlessly for over an hour, searching places Derek might be, but nothing. When I got home, his absence was palpable, his toothbrush, his shoes, the faint scent of his cologne, ghostly reminders of where he should have been. I stood in the kitchen for what felt like forever, staring at the front door, willing it to open. But it didn't. Desperate, I started scrolling through our bank account. I needed answers. That's when I saw it, a hotel charge from earlier that day. Relief and anger hit me all at once. He was okay, but he was hiding out, avoiding me. The nerve. I called the hotel immediately, my fingers trembling. I didn't even know what I planned to say. But it didn't matter. The clerk wouldn't confirm anything. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said in that fake polite tone, "but I can't disclose any information about our guests." I wanted to scream. Instead, I hung up and started typing a text. Asterisk, "I know where you are. Can you stop being childish and come home so we can talk?" Asterisk, my fingers shook as I stared at the screen. Then I deleted it. If he wanted to act like a coward, let him. But the knot in my stomach wouldn't go away. I hated this, feeling powerless, like he had the upper hand. Derek was supposed to be the one who chased me, who forgave me, who let me vent and then moved on. That's how it always worked. So, why wasn't it working now? The next morning, the silence was suffocating. I couldn't focus on anything. By mid-afternoon, I caved. I drove to the hotel, determined to confront him. But the desk clerk gave me the same rehearsed line about privacy. "He's my husband," I snapped. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she repeated, her smile irritatingly calm. Defeated, I trudged back to my car. Sitting there, staring at the steering wheel, a wave of fear washed over me. Real fear. What if he wasn't coming back? What if I'd truly gone too far this time? I told myself it wasn't serious. He just needed space. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the truth. This wasn't just about what I'd said to Danny. This was a pattern, me prioritizing my feelings over his. Maybe this time, he'd had enough. Still, I wasn't ready to apologize.
Not yet.
I needed to see him first, to make sure he was okay, and if I'm honest, to figure out how to spin this in my favor. If there's one thing I've always been good at, it's talking my way out of a mess. And this was just another mess. But Derek didn't let me wait much longer. That evening, the front door finally opened. There he was, calm, too calm. He didn't slam the door or throw his keys down like I might have. Instead, he walked in, set his bag by the couch, and stood there, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," he said, his voice steady and cold. "No kidding," I shot back, crossing my arms. I was already defensive, even though deep down I knew I should have been the one to apologize. But I couldn't start there. It felt like admitting I was wrong would hand him some kind of power over me, and I wasn't ready for that. Derek sat down on the couch and motioned for me to join him. I stayed where I was, leaning against the kitchen counter, like I had better things to do. "Are you going to explain why you ghosted me for 2 days?" I asked, trying to sound casual. But the sharp edge in my voice betrayed me. He sighed, rubbing his hands together, as if trying to warm them. "I needed space," he said, his tone measured. "To think. To figure out how to even talk to you after what I heard." I rolled my eyes. "Oh, come on, Derek. Really? You overheard one thing, something I said in private to my sister, and now you're acting like it's the end of the world." "It wasn't just one thing, Lindsay," he replied, his voice rising slightly before he reined it back in. "You said you'd never date me if you could go back. That you wouldn't choose me. Well, maybe I wouldn't." The words flew out of my mouth before I could stop them, hanging in the air like a bomb I'd just detonated. Regret washed over me, but instead of backing down, I pushed forward. You've changed, Derek. We both know it. You're not the same guy I married. I hesitated, searching for the right words. My emotions took over. You're lazier now, okay? You've let yourself go. You don't even try anymore. Can you really blame me for feeling this way? For the first time, I saw genuine hurt in his eyes. But instead of lashing out, he nodded slowly, as if he'd been expecting this. So that's it, he said quietly. You think I'm fat and ugly, and that's why you'd rather not be with me? I rolled my eyes again, brushing off the weight of what I'd just said. Don't twist my words. I didn't say I didn't want to be with you. I said if I could go back, I might have made a different choice. That's not the same thing. Sure sounds like it to me, he replied, his voice steady but firm. And, you know what? Maybe you're right. I have changed. I've gotten older. I've gained weight. I've gotten comfortable. But that's what happens when you're married, Lindsay. You settle into life together.
You build something.
At least that's what I thought we were doing. My face flushed as embarrassment and anger bubbled to the surface. Don't make this about me, I snapped, my voice rising. Do you think I don't notice how distant you've been? How you barely talk to me unless it's about work or bills or dinner? You're not exactly giving me a reason to feel excited about this marriage, Derek. So this is my fault now, he asked, his tone calm but incredulous. I'm the reason you're unhappy? The reason you don't respect me enough to keep a conversation like that between you and your sisters? I threw up my hands in frustration. You're twisting everything. I'm just saying maybe if you put in a little more effort, worked out, showed some interest in me like you used to, I wouldn't feel this way. He stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he stood and met my gaze. His voice, calm and steady, cut through the tension. You know what, Lindsay? I think this says more about you than it does about me. My stomach flipped. What's that supposed to mean? I snapped, panic creeping into my voice. It means, he said, his tone unshaken, that you don't see what you have. You've got someone who has stood by you through every impulsive decision, every reckless purchase, every high and low, without judgment. Someone who offered unwavering support, even when it wasn't deserved. But instead of appreciating that, you searched for reasons to tear me down. I opened my mouth to respond, but he wasn't done. I know I'm not perfect. I know I've changed. But so have you, Lindsay, and not in ways that make this marriage easier. You've become someone who avoids accountability, who lashes out instead of talking, and who'd rather blame me than face the mirror. His words hit me like a slap. But instead of admitting he might be right, I lashed out. Oh, so now you're the saint? The hero holding this marriage together while I'm the problem. He shook his head, picking up his bag. No, Lindsay, I'm not perfect. But at least I'm trying. And I'm done standing here, letting you make me feel like I'm not enough. If you can't see my worth anymore, maybe we need to take a step back. I froze. What are you saying? I'm saying I need more than this, he said, gesturing between us. And if you're not willing to work on it, maybe I shouldn't be here anymore.
He didn't yell.
He didn't slam the door. He just walked out, leaving me standing there, stunned and more confused than I'd ever been. The days that followed felt surreal. Derek didn't come back, not even for his mail. The house was quiet, achingly empty. It wasn't just his absence that hurt. It was the silence, the absence of everything he brought into my life. I reached out hesitantly, testing the waters, but his responses were polite and distant. Hope you're doing okay. I'll come by this weekend to grab my things. That was it. No warmth, no opening for conversation. He wasn't cruel, just done. When the weekend came, I dreaded seeing him. But when he walked through the door, he was different. His shoulders were squared, his posture confident. He'd trimmed his beard, and it looked good, polished, intentional. Even his cologne smelled like a fresh start. Hey, I said, awkwardly standing by the counter. Hey, he replied, nodding but not stopping to chat. He went straight to the bedroom and started packing. I followed, desperate to break the silence. Derek, can we talk? He didn't stop. About what? I hesitated. About us. He paused, meeting my gaze with an unreadable expression. What about us, Lindsay? You made it clear how you feel. I didn't mean it like that, I stammered, stepping closer. I was upset. I wasn't thinking. He shook his head, resuming his packing. No, Lindsay, you were thinking. You just didn't think I'd listen. Tears burned in my eyes, but I swallowed them down. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, he said firmly, finally turning to face me. And it's not just that one fight. It's everything. The way you talk to me, the way you treat me. It's like I'm never enough for you. I know I was wrong. I'll do better. We can fix this. We've been through worse, haven't we? He laughed bitterly. Have we? Because I don't think we've ever been here, Lindsay. I've never felt this disrespected, this unwanted. And the worst part? I stayed. I kept trying, even when you made it clear you didn't appreciate me. That's on me. I let it get this far. His words cut deep because they were true. I couldn't argue. So, what? You're giving up on us? My voice cracked, betraying my desperation. I'm not giving up. I'm choosing myself. I'm done trying to prove my worth to someone who doesn't see it. I stared at him, my mind racing. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to forgive me, to promise we'd figure it out. Instead, he stood there, calm and resolved, like the decision had already been made. I can change, I whispered. I'll be better. He sighed, setting down the box in his hands. Lindsay, I hope you do. Not for me, but for yourself. But I can't be the one waiting for you to figure it out. I've spent years trying to make you happy, and all I've gotten in return is resentment. I deserve better. His words stung more than I could have imagined. The tears finally spilled over, and for once, I didn't try to hide them. I don't want to lose you, I said, my voice breaking. Please, Derek. We can fix this. He looked at me for a long moment. For a second, I thought I saw something, pity, maybe, or regret. But then he shook his head. I've already lost too much of myself trying to fix this, he said softly. I can't do it anymore. He picked up the box and walked out, leaving me standing there as my heart shattered into pieces. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into distractions. Work, friends, anything to avoid the emptiness of our home. But no matter what I did, the silence was deafening. Derek wasn't just gone. He'd taken a piece of me with him. A month later, I saw him at a coffee shop. He was sitting with a woman I didn't recognize, pretty, with an effortless kind of beauty. They were laughing, and he looked happy, happier than I'd seen him in years. I wanted to march over, to remind him I was still his wife. But I didn't. I just stood there, watching from a distance, feeling the weight of my own mistakes. When he noticed me, his smile faded for a moment. But he didn't look angry, just distant. He gave me a small nod, then turned back to his conversation. It was like I was already a memory, something he'd moved past. As I walked out of the coffee shop, the full weight of my choices crushed me. I'd spent so much time criticizing him, tearing him down, that I hadn't seen how much he'd given me. And now it was too late. For the first time, I truly understood loneliness. And for the first time, I realized the truth. It wasn't Derek who had failed me. It was me.